Thank you again to Brandon Arthur for inviting me to present at Street Leverage. I am thrilled to be here. As you can see via my introduction, I grew up in using British Sign Language, BSL, as my native language. I have a second sign language, which is Australian Sign Language, also known as Auslan. And then my third is ASL. So please be patient with me through this presentation today. You might notice an oddity of my signs, and it might just be a combination of all three of those being presented today. So I beg of you to be patient. In addition, I want to follow what Brandon has also said and really having a nod to my heritage. I am from a deaf family of 4 generations, so I grew up using British Sign Language as my first language, and so I think it's important to acknowledge that lens that I bring to the table. Unfortunately, my family was not able to be here today, but I learned a lot from that experience. And I was lucky that I was able to grow up in the UK and London and acquire my first sign language of British Sign Language. And then I worked in Australia and was an interpreter educator there and took on Auslan, and now I've met many of you in the United States and have, through that interaction, been able to learn some ASL. Throughout my profession, including teaching, research, and interpreting, and also being able to live in a variety of different countries, I am bringing today that information and my thoughts related to my observations and how the world view of the field of sign language interpreting. And this isn't including any of my research, but more of my anecdotal information. And I think it's still relevant to today's conversation. I am also a certified international sign language interpreter and certified in 3 countries. So I feel I have a lot to give through my observations, and hopefully you will agree with me today as we move forward. So I thought I would provide a little bit of context with my presentation. As I mentioned, I've been able to travel extensively. And WFD is the World Federation for the Deaf. They estimate about 70 million deaf people worldwide. And out of that, if we actually look at including hearing people that sign as well, that number is also exponentially. And we see that throughout the world, that through movies that have come out and other social media, that the status of sign languages has really been elevated as of recently. And so you see that impact on both the deaf and hearing populations. So if we look at that about 70 million deaf people, we see that exponentially grow within interpreter education as well. And if we look specifically at Europe, we can estimate that there are about 7,500 certified interpreters working in Europe. And in the UK, I would say we're about a little over 1,000. In Australia, maybe 1,000 as well. And I think here at RID certification in the United States is about 1,500 members. So if we count all of those up, we can estimate about 30,000 certified interpreters in the world. And that also wouldn't then include any interpreters who are not yet certified, which we know exist as well. So we can expound even that number even more so as well. And we see interpreters just expound on how many of them currently are working. So that's a little bit of the context. We have set up standards and systems and protocols to improve interpreters historically. And yet we haven't reached that perfect pinnacle point yet. One important thing I want to emphasize is language recognition. We know throughout the world that there's 33 countries that have legally recognized sign language as a language. And this could be through parliament or law, something that actually officially notates. About 33 of those countries have done so. In addition, there's about 138 who have recognized, not maybe officially and legally, but that there are sign languages used in those countries. And as we notice that recognition of sign language, we also see that the field of interpreting is parallel to that growth as well. And as you saw on the slide, some examples of different organizations and associations that have come to be from that. There's WASLI that was set up in 2005, the World Association of Sign Language Interpreting. RID was the first to set up, and that was in 1964. Gosh, I have a hard time with numbers in American Sign Language, so I'll just do it in British Sign Language, 1964. it's easier for me to produce. So we already know historically that the field is about 50 years old of sign language interpreting, and we see this through the expansion of associations and organizations. And as Street Leverage has already presented on as well, that there is experience and history and how we've seen that transformation over time. And we also look at the field of sign language specifically